So you work in English, but you're not a native speaker. You sometimes feel nervous about communicating in English or about cultural differences. Well, you're not alone. So there's around 1.3 billion people speaking English in the world, and only 350 million are English native speakers. So the good thing is that there's a remaining 1 billion people speaking English who are not native speakers, and if you speak and work in English, you're already doing great. So the aim of this video is to provide an overview of the challenges faced by non-English native speakers in the context of their professional environments. And I will also try to provide some tips because of the importance of addressing these issues for your personal and professional development, as well as for your confidence. And my name is Federich. I'm an international lawyer on a YouTube mission to provide value to at least one person per video, and I'm not an English native speaker. So let's go and cover the main challenges and share some practical tips in order for you to thrive in your English-speaking workplace. So there's a number of main challenges that English non-native speakers face on a daily basis. And the first one is certainly language proficiency. And what do I mean by language proficiency? I mean that you struggle with things like vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. Vocabulary because, for instance, you're trying to express some thoughts, but you lack the words, you lack the knowledge of certain terms or certain concepts that you have in your native language, but you don't have in English. Grammar because you're trying to express certain things, you're trying to express certain thoughts, but you explain them in a wrong way. And pronunciation because maybe you have the words, you have the terms, but you don't pronounce them the right way. Or maybe you have difficulty understanding different accents. For instance, you work in highly international environments and you have colleagues from the US, you have colleagues from the UK, or you have colleagues from Italy, and all these accents and variations confuse your mind and they don't help you understanding the actual meaning of a word or sentences. Or maybe you have trouble with idiomatic expressions, with the ways of saying, or with different jargon. For example, according to some slang, some people would say, let's touch base on that later, let's revert to it in due time. But what does due time mean in that precise context? What does it mean to touch base on that later? Or for example, you are exposed to a certain jargon. For instance, in the European Union bubble where I work, people use terms such as stakeholder, framework, and these terms are very typical of this environment. And another main challenge is not having confidence or being afraid of making mistakes. So many people may develop some forms of anxiety to make grammatical errors or pronunciation mistakes. And as a result, they may develop some forms of hesitation to speak up or to intervene in the context of meetings. And for example, they would refrain from asking questions because of fear of judgment. Another typical challenge is the so-called cultural barrier, the fear of misunderstandings due to cultural differences in communication styles. And in fact, certain cultural approaches are more direct, while other approaches are more polite and formalistic. And as a result, you may struggle with humor, you may struggle with small talks, you may struggle with socializing in the context of your workplace. Other challenges are linked to certain professional jargon, as I said earlier, or to certain high expectations that are linked to this or that professional environment. And as a result, in some industry sectors, you are supposed to learn sector-specific terminology, and the standards may be very high. Think about the legal environment, which I'm very familiar with. You are supposed to speak and produce English at very high level in order to work as a lawyer. And the same applies to writing professional emails or reports that have to meet very high standards. Another huge challenge you have to experience as a non-English native speaker is being exposed to fast-paced communication. And with fast-paced communication, I mean that you may have difficulties following fast oral interactions. For instance, you are in the context of oral meetings or phone calls and you have to follow a lot of consecutive concepts and you have to take notes. And so you may be overwhelmed by the speed of talking of certain native speakers or English speakers who are not native but are particularly fluent. All these challenges altogether may make you develop feelings of isolation or imposter syndrome, and as a result you may feel excluded or not capable due to language barriers. And this, of course, increases the psychological burden on you. You may feel not competent because English is not your first language. But okay, there is a number of tips that you can put into practice in order to overcome these challenges. The first tip is to improve your language skills consistently. And you can do that by dedicating time for daily practice. And there's a lot of apps for that. Babbel, Duolingo, Memrise can help you to improve your vocabulary by a lot. Or you can listen to podcasts, watch YouTube videos to improve your listening comprehension. But also to improve your language skills consistently, you can focus on context-specific learning. And how can you do that? You can, for instance, take certain texts, papers, publications in your industry and read them carefully in order to understand some concepts and enrich your vocabulary. And again, one example which is particularly relevant for my experience is the European Union jargon. In fact, when I was younger, I was taking European Union textbooks or publications or articles, and I was reading through them in order to enrich my vocabulary and to familiarize with that specific vocabulary. And another useful thing in this respect is to record yourself while speaking, precisely as I'm doing now, because when you record and when you re-listen to yourself, you identify pronunciation issues and fluency issues. The second important tip I would feel like sharing is to ask for feedback or help. You can seek constructing criticisms from colleagues, from managers, from peers, and ask them to tell you what they think about your speaking, about your proficiency, about your fluency. And ideally, they should be people who are very fluent in English or even better native speakers. And don't be afraid to be direct and ask questions such as, how can I improve my email writing? How can I improve meeting participation? Or you can ask for feedback to certain very useful tools such as Grammarly, which is a great tool that I use several times to improve my writing skills. Another great tip is to practice speaking in low-stakes environments. What do I mean by that? You can join online language exchange platforms such as Tandem or HelloTalk and practice your conversation skills in a very relaxed environment. You can attend local meetups or events to practice your conversational English. For instance, when I used to work in the UK, I was forcing myself to go to social events in order to speak with native speakers and improve my English, challenge myself, and come up every time with something new. You can also roleplay certain work scenarios with a friend or a coach. Another great tip, which is something that was very useful for me in my English speaking journey, is to work on active listening and also note-taking. In fact, if you develop focused listening skills, you're not just understanding what you're listening to, you're also making it yours, and you can reuse those sentences, those ways of saying in the future in the context of your speaking abilities. And this also applies to when you watch English TV shows or movies with subtitles. You can carefully listen to them and then you can re-employ them in your daily life. And about taking notes, when you're taking notes during meetings or calls, you are learning how to write certain sentences, certain words, and if you don't understand them, you can look them up, you can maybe circle them and look them up later. Another huge tip I would feel like sharing is try and overcome your fear of making mistakes. In fact, every mistake is a step closer to improvement. And you should also de-dramatize mistakes, have a laugh, smile about them, including in front of your colleagues. They will understand that you are approachable, easygoing, and they will laugh with you about them. Another tip that you can put into practice is to adapt to cultural norms. For instance, you can learn about the workplace culture in advance, try and understand certain manners, certain etiquettes, and be ready in advance. And I'm again speaking very much out of experience because in the legal world you have certain professional etiquettes or formalisms, but it's good to prepare in advance and then once you're there, know how to behave. And in this respect, there is a great tool that can help you, which is to use small talk to build relationships. In fact, if you simply ask simple questions to your colleagues such as, how was your weekend? You will improve your relationships, and as a result, your small talks, your oral interactions will be easier. Another great tip is to slow down communication when needed. Don't be afraid to ask again. Don't be afraid to ask for a clarification if you didn't understand something. There's nothing wrong in asking for a repetition, even if you look like a bit stupid. Don't refrain from asking questions such as, could you speak a bit slower? Could you repeat that again? There's nothing wrong with it. Or another very useful technique is to summarize what you understood, repeat it to your interlocutor, and ask for a confirmation. By doing that, you will demonstrate that you are actively listening and that you are understanding, and if not, you will ask for a confirmation. Another huge tip which many people underestimate is to leverage technology. There's a lot of very useful tools that you can use on the internet. I'm thinking about Grammarly or Lingui, and they can very much help you to familiarize with certain ways of saying and also with putting words or sentences into the context. And finally, you can also join network groups with other English non-native speakers, share conversation strategies, tips and tricks in order to succeed. But pay attention, because by speaking English to other non-native speakers, you may also learn mistakes and you should avoid it. Okay, and there's a number of other tips that I could certainly share, such as practice in the context of public speaking or practice job interviews, but I will leave those for another episode. But there is certainly something you should always be doing, and that is to celebrate progress. Because remember, working in English or in any other language as a non-native speaker is a huge success. And remember to be confident, because your value is not just about your language skills. Your value is about your expertise, your experiences, about your willingness to grow and to learn. And what's the one tip from this video that you'll start practicing today? Share it in the comments if you feel like it. And if you're interested in pursuing an international career, you may want to have a look at the video over here, which is about the steps to take to become an international lawyer. In any case, thanks a lot for watching, and if you found this helpful or enjoyable in any possible way, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It would very much help me in my YouTube journey. Thank you very much. To the next one. Peace.